The flight from New York to Malaga had been a blur of recycled air and half-hearted small talk, the kind Emily and I had perfected over a decade of shared heartaches. Emily Harper, the perpetual optimist with a backpack full of dog-eared novels and a heart stitched together from too many goodbyes, had convinced myself this trip was our reset button. Amelia Vargas, my anchor since we were gangly teens fumbling through coming-out stories in suburban Ohio garages, deserved it. Her texts had grown sparse lately, laced with that brittle cheer that screamed, "I'm fine," while her world quietly unraveled. "Spain, I'd messaged back. "Just you, me, and enough sangria to drown our demons." She'd replied with a heart emoji, and that was enough. We landed under a sky bruised purple by jet lag, the humid kiss of the Mediterranean wrapping around us like an old lover's promise. Amelia's family owned a villa tucked into the cliffs near Marbella, her dad's retirement dream, a sprawling whitewashed haven with terracotta roofs and bougainvilleas spilling over every wall like laughter frozen in time. Mr. Vargas, Carlos to his poker buddies back in Cleveland, but always, sir, in my wary deference, had sunk his savings into it after Mrs. Vargas passed 5 years ago. Cancer, quick and merciless, leaving behind a man who built walls higher than the Sierra Nevada to hide his grief. Amelia greeted me at arrivals with a hug that lingered a beat too long, her dark curls tickling my cheek, smelling of vanilla and salt. At 30, she was all sharp edges softened by those hazel eyes that could unravel me with a glance. Taller than me by an inch, with olive skin kissed golden from summers she'd spent chasing waves instead of deadlines, she moved like she owned the earth, confident, unapologetic, the kind of lesbian icon who'd turn heads in a dive bar or a boardroom. We'd met at 15, bonding over bootleg copies of the L Word and the terror of family dinners where girls like us were whispered about like urban legends. She'd been my first kiss, fumbling and sweet under a willow tree, but we'd chalked it up to experimentation. Or so we told ourselves. Life pulled us apart, her to art school in Barcelona, me to journalism gigs in Manhattan, but the thread between us never snapped. The first days blurred into a haze of lazy perfection. Mornings dawned with espresso strong enough to wake the dead, sipped on the villa's infinity pool overlooking the azure sprawl of the sea. Afternoons melted into siestas, our laughter echoing off the stucco as we swapped stories of exes who'd ghosted or fumbled the art of loving women who loved fiercely. Amelia's laugh was a weapon, disarming and deep, pulling confessions from me I'd sworn to keep locked. "Remember that time in college when we crashed that pride parade in Pittsburgh?" she'd say, her foot brushing mine under the table, accidental as always. I'd nod, heat rising not from the sun but from the what-ifs I'd buried like Spanish doubloons. Her dad hovered at the edges, a shadow in linen shirts and quiet smiles. Carlos Vargas was the archetype of the American dream gone expatriate, second-generation Cuban immigrant who'd clawed his way to a construction firm in the Rust Belt, only to trade hard hats for olive groves in his 50s. Broad-shouldered, with a salt and pepper beard that hid the dimples he'd passed to Amelia, he carried himself with the easy authority of a man who'd stared down recessions and funerals. He doted on us in subtle ways, fresh figs from the market, playlists of flamenco mixed with Springsteen blaring from hidden speakers. But there was a tightness in his eyes when he looked at Amelia, a flicker of something unspoken that made my reporter's instincts twitch. On the third night, after a dinner of paella under strings of fairy lights, garlic shrimp and saffron rice that tasted like summer's soul, we decided on the resort down the coast. Hot springs and hotter gossip, Amelia declared, her grin wicked as she tossed me a bikini from her suitcase. The place was a jewel, white arches framing views of the Strait of Gibraltar, where Africa whispered across the waves. We checked in under the guise of a girls' spa day, but really, it was our ritual, steam rooms to sweat out the lies we told ourselves about being just friends. The sauna was a cocoon of heat and hushed secrets, eucalyptus branches hanging like talismans from the ceiling. We stripped down to towels, the air so thick it clung to our skin like regret. Amelia sank onto the bench first, her legs stretched out, towel riding high on toned thighs earned from weekend hikes in the Pyrenees. "God, I needed this," she sighed, tilting her head back, exposing the curve of her neck that I'd traced in dreams but never in daylight. I sat beside her, close enough to feel the radiate warmth of her body, my pulsator thundering in my ears. We talked in fragments, her latest gallery show in Madrid flopping harder than expected, my editor slashing another piece on queer icons in politics. "You're too good for that grind, she murmured, her hand finding mine in the steam, fingers interlacing like puzzle pieces long separated. The touch sent sparks up my arm, but I pulled back with a joke about the heat playing tricks. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. There was a shadow there, a hesitation that had crept in since her mom's death, turning my bold Amelia into someone who armored herself in silence. That's when the door creaked open, admitting a gust of cooler air and the silhouette of Carlos. He paused, a towel knotted at his waist, surprise etching his features. "Ladies," he said, voice gravelly from disuse. "Mind if I join? Doc says the steam's good for the joints." Amelia waved him in with mock exasperation. "Dad, boundaries." But there was affection in it, the kind that came from being the only two left in a family fractured by loss. He settled on the opposite bench, the steam swallowing the details of his form, leaving only the glint of his wedding ring, still worn, a ghost on his finger. Conversation flowed easy at first, complaints about the Euros bite, memories of Amelia's childhood Christmases with tamales and tinsel. But as the heat deepened, so did the pauses, the air growing heavy with the unsaid. It hit like a rogue wave. Carlos leaned forward, elbows on knees, staring at the tiled floor as if it held the script he'd rehearsed 1,000 times. "Emily," he started, his accent thickening under strain, the Cuban lilt he'd softened for Ohio winters now raw and exposed. "There's something about Amelia. Something I need to tell you, because you're family to her. More than family, maybe." Amelia stiffened beside me, her hand jerking from mine. "Dad, not now. Please." But he pressed on, voice cracking like dry earth. "She didn't tell you about Sophia, did she? Or the letters? The ones from back home?" My stomach twisted, the heat turning claustrophobic. "Sophia, who?" The name landed like a slap, conjuring images of candlelit dinners and whispered promises I'd never shared with Amelia. We'd vowed no secrets, or so I'd thought. "What letters?" I managed, my voice a thread. Carlos's eyes met mine, dark pools of apology. "The ones proving she's not coming back to you, not like that. She's engaged, Emily. To a man. In Barcelona. It's been months. She wanted to tell you herself, but she couldn't." The world tilted. Amelia's face crumpled, tears carving tracks through the sweat on her cheeks. "It's not what you think," she choked out, reaching for me. But I recoiled, the bench a chasm between us. Betrayal bloomed hot and vicious in my chest, not just the lie, but the erasure of us, of the almost love I'd nurtured like a fragile vine in barren soil. I fled the sauna that night, bursting into the cool embrace of the Spanish dusk, my towel discarded like shed skin. The sea roared below, indifferent to the storm in my heart. How could she? After everything, the pride flags we'd sewn together, the breakdowns we'd weathered hand in hand. Sophia. A man. It wasn't the orientation that gutted me, it was the facade, the way she'd let me spin fantasies of forever while building walls I couldn't scale. Back at the villa, I locked myself in the guest room, the walls closing in with the scent of jasmine from the garden. Sleep evaded me, chased away by replays of her touch, now tainted. Dawn found me on the balcony, nursing black coffee, when Carlos appeared below, his figure small against the infinity pool's edge. He didn't look up, just stared at the horizon where Europe kissed Africa. "I'm sorry, kid," he called softly, as if the distance could soften the blow. "I thought you deserved the truth. For her sake. For yours. Truth." It tasted like ash. But in that moment, staring at the man who'd raised the woman I loved, I saw my own reflection, flawed, grieving, human in our capacity to wound. The conflict simmered, a pot left too long on the flame, waiting for the boil over. The days that followed were a masterclass in avoidance, the villa transforming from sanctuary to minefield. Amelia tried, God, did she try, cornering me in the kitchen with plates of churros dusted in sugar, her apologies tumbling out like rosary beads. Emily, listen. It's not an engagement, not really. Sophia's family. They're old school, pushing her into this to save face after the gallery scandal. I was going to end it. I swear. Her hazel eyes pleaded, raw and ringed with exhaustion, but I couldn't unhear the sauna's echo, couldn't erase the image of Carlos's reluctant mercy. Mercy? Or meddling? The question gnawed at me during solitary walks along the cliff paths, where wild thyme crushed underfoot and released scents that mingled memory with melancholy. I'd always seen Carlos as the steady patriarch, the one who'd driven through blizzards to pick Amelia up from her first failed relationship, who'd toasted her coming out with a quiet, te quiero, mija, that bridged generations. But now, he was the architect of my unraveling, his confession a grenade lobbed into the heart of our friendship. I confronted him on the fourth morning, the sun barely cresting the hills, casting long shadows across the patio tiles. He was pruning the bougainvillea, shears snipping with surgical precision, his linen shirt rolled to elbows revealing forearms corded from years of labor. Why? I demanded, voice sharper than I'd intended. Why tell me like that? In the steam, like some bad soap opera. He set the shears down, wiping sweat from his brow with a bandana that smelled faintly of motor oil, a holdover from his garage days. His eyes, so like Amelia's, held no defensiveness, only a bone-deep weariness. Because I've watched you two dance around this for years, Emily. The looks, the touches that linger. You're in love with her. Hell, maybe she feels it too. But lies. They eat you alive. I know. He paused, glancing toward the sea, where freighters dotted the horizon like forgotten promises. After Maria. I promised myself no more silences. Not in my house. Maria. Her name hung between us, a specter. I'd seen the photos, a vibrant woman with Amelia's smile, arms wrapped around her daughter at baseball games, hospital beds. Cancer hadn't just taken her. It had hollowed Carlos, turning a loquacious man into one who measured words like rations. You think you're saving us? I pressed, arms crossed against the chill that had nothing to do with the breeze. Or punishing her for not being the perfect daughter. His laugh was bitter, a rumble from his chest. Punishing? No. Protecting. Sophia's no good for her, pushy, entitled, from that crowd in Barcelona who see art as a hobby for the idle rich. But Amelia. She's stubborn, like her mother. Thinks she can fix everything with a smile. I couldn't let her drag you into that mess without a heads up. It was the closest he'd come to admitting his own fears, of losing Amelia to the same isolating choices that had widowed him young. But understanding didn't dull the ache. Betrayal layered upon betrayal, Amelia's secret, Carlos's intrusion. I left him there, shears abandoned, and wandered into Marbella's labyrinthine streets, where market stalls overflowed with ceramics painted in cobalt blues and the air hummed with haggling in rapid Spanish. That night, the storm broke, not the weather, though thunder grumbled offshore, but the one brewing in Amelia's chest. She found me on the beach access path, barefoot in the sand, the waves lapping at my ankles like tentative apologies. The moon hung low, silvering the foam, and she approached with the caution of someone stepping through glass shards. I ended it, she said simply, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Called Sophia from the villa phone. Told her it's over. For good. I turned, salt stinging my eyes, or was it tears? And the letters. The lies. She winced, sinking onto the damp sand beside me, knees drawn to chest. Her curls whipped in the wind, wild as her confessions. The letters were from her family, pressuring me. After the gallery, some critic called my work derivative dyke drivel. They offered a bailout. A marriage of convenience, to stabilize things. I was desperate, broke, scared. But I never signed anything. Never meant it. Desperation. The word echoed my own, the years of pining in silence, editing articles on queer resilience while my own heart cowered. Why not tell me? I'm not some fragile thing you shield from the world. Because I didn't want to lose you. Her voice cracked, and she reached for my hand, this time not pulling away when I let her. Skin to skin, pulse to pulse, the contact was electric, a current long denied. You've always been my safe place. The one who sees me, not the prodigy daughter, not the grieving mess, just me. Admitting I was flailing. It felt like admitting failure. We sat like that as the tide rose, the sea a confessional murmuring absolution. Words spilled then, hers about the isolation of exile, creating in a city that celebrated her queerness by day but whispered judgments by night, mine about the terror of loving her too much, of risking the friendship for a love that might shatter us both. Vulnerability wove us closer, threads of emotion tightening into something unbreakable. When her head found my shoulder, damp curls against my neck, it wasn't pity or obligation. It was homecoming. But peace is fleeting in dramas scripted by fate. The next afternoon, as we lounged by the pool, Amelia sketching in her notebook, me scrolling through half-written pitches, a call shattered the idyll. Carlos's phone, left charging on the outdoor table, buzzed insistently. The screen lit up, Sophia. Against better judgment, I answered, heart hammering. Emily. Is Amelia there? Tell her it's urgent, her father's involved now. Involved. The line went dead before clarification, but the seed of doubt took root. That evening, over gazpacho chilled to perfection, Amelia's mood soured, her sketches abandoned for fidgeting fingers. Carlos was late from an errand, in town, his absence a vacuum sucking the air from the room. When he returned, face ashen, bearing a bottle of Rioja like an offering, the truth uncoiled slowly, venomous. I went to see Sophia, he admitted, pouring with unsteady hands. After your call, wait, no, she reached out. Said Amelia's debts from the gallery. They're calling them in. Legal trouble if unpaid. Amelia's fork clattered. You what? Dad, I told you I'd handle it. He met her glare with defiance born of love. And let you drown. I negotiated, wired what I could from the villa fund. But Sophia. She twisted it. Said it'd buy time, but only if you reconsider the engagement. Publicly, for her family's sake. Betrayal redux, sharper this time. Amelia shoved back from the table, chair scraping like a scream. You bargained with my life. For money. Tears welled, but fury won. I'm not your project to fix. I stood between them, hands raised, the air thick with the metallic tang of impending fracture. Stop. Both of you. But the damage rippled outward, waves crashing against the pillars of trust we'd only just rebuilt. Amelia stormed to her room, door slamming like a guillotine. Carlos slumped, head in hands, murmuring, I just wanted to protect her. Like I couldn't protect Maria. In the quiet aftermath, I saw the pattern, love as a cage, well-intentioned bars forged from fear. That night, slipping into Amelia's room under cover of darkness, I found her curled on the bed, sobs muffled in pillows. No words, just my arms around her, holding the pieces as the thunder rolled closer, promising a tempest. The storm hit at midnight, rain lashing the villa like accusations, wind howling through the shutters as if mourning our fractures. I lay awake beside Amelia, her breathing ragged in sleep, body pressed to mine in unconscious seeking. The closeness was a balm and a burn, her warmth seeping through my thin tank top, stirring the embers I'd banked for years. But dawn brought no clarity, only the sticky residue of unresolved grief. She woke with puffy eyes, pulling away to murmur, I need space, to think. The word stung, but I nodded, swallowing the plea to stay woven together. Carlos was a ghost that morning, retreating to the garage where he tinkered with an old Vespa, oil-smeared hands a distraction from the wreckage. I found him there mid-afternoon, bent over the engine, radio crooning Joan Manuel Serrat's laments in Spanish. She hates me, he said without preamble, not looking up. Always has, deep down. For not saving her mom. For dragging us here, away from everything familiar. I leaned against the workbench, surrounded by shelves of rusted tools and faded postcards from Ohio. She doesn't hate you. She's hurt. We all are. The garage smelled of gasoline and earth, grounding in its grit. But you can't buy her freedom, Carlos. Or mine. He straightened, wiping his hands on a rag, eyes searching mine with a vulnerability that mirrored his daughter's. You remind me of Maria, you know. Fierce. Unyielding. She would have liked you, for Amelia. A pause, heavy as the rain-scoured air. I meddled because. After she died, I swore I'd never let silence win again. But maybe I drowned the wrong fires. Confession hung between us, a bridge over the chasm. I saw him then, not the intruder, but a man adrift, his love for Amelia a lighthouse flickering against encroaching dark. Talk to her, I urged. Not as the dad with the checkbook. As the man who knows loss. Emboldened, perhaps, by the raw honesty, I sought Amelia on the cliffs, where she'd always gone to paint her storms. The path wound treacherous after the rain, mud slick underfoot, sea spray mingling with mist. She sat on a weathered outcrop, easel braced against the wind, canvas a whirl of indigos and crimsons, her heart rendered in fury. Go away, Emily, she called over the gale, brush slashing like a blade. But I didn't. I sat beside her, silent sentinel, until the fight ebbed from her strokes. It's all falling apart, she whispered finally, setting the palette aside. Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks, carving clean paths. The gallery, Sophia's threats, Dad's. Everything. I came here to escape, but it's chasing me. I took her hand, chilled and trembling. Then face it. With us. The words were a leap, heart exposed. I love you, Amelia. Not as the friend who picks up pieces. As the woman who's wanted you since that willow tree. Lies or no, I'm here. She turned, hazel eyes widening, then softening into wonder. You. The kiss came tentative, salt-tinged lips meeting mine, a question answered in the curl of her fingers in my hair. It deepened, not with hunger but with the ache of homecomings delayed, the wind our witness as waves crashed below in applause. But climax demands crescendo. As we descended the path, entwined and breathless, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. Sophia, ask your precious Carlos about the real debt. The one he owes me, from Maria's treatments. He traded your future for his guilt. The world stuttered. I showed Amelia, her face draining of color. We burst into the villa, finding Carlos in the study, papers scattered like fallen leaves. Tell me it's not true, she demanded, voice steel. He deflated, shoulders slumping. It is. Years ago, when Maria was sick. Sophia's family lent us money, off books. No banks for immigrants like us. I paid most back, but the interest. After she died, I couldn't. Sophia found out about your engagement farce and leveraged it. I thought wiring the villa money would square us, by time for you to break free. Betrayal's final act, not malice, but the desperate arithmetic of survival. Amelia recoiled, a sob escaping. You used me. To erase your past. No. He reached for her, but she shrank back. To protect your future. I failed Maria, I wouldn't fail you. The room spun with recriminations, voices overlapping in a cacophony of hurt. I mediated, voice breaking, enough. This isn't about blame. It's about chains we forge from love. To Carlos, you can't atone for death by controlling life. To Amelia, and you can't run from pain by hiding it. Silence fell, broken only by the distant sea. Amelia crossed to him, tentative, then enveloped him in embrace, the first in years, perhaps. I need you to trust me, Dad. To let me fall. He nodded, tears carving his weathered face. I will. Te lo juro. In the humanism of that fracture mended, we rebuilt. Sophia's threats dissolved under legal scrutiny. Turns out, her family's loans skirted usury laws, crumbling under daylight. The gallery. Amelia channeled the scandal into a new series, Silences, raw canvases of shadowed figures breaking free, selling out in Madrid to murmurs of brave and revolutionary. We stayed on in Spain, the villa no longer cage but canvas. Mornings found us tangled in sheets, Amelia's laughter waking the bougainvillea. Carlos adapted, his meddling traded for quiet support, driving us to exhibits, toasting with Rioja at dinners where stories flowed without armor. One evening, as sunset bled orange across the pool, Amelia pulled me aside, ring box simple and silver in her palm. No more silences, she whispered, slipping it on my finger. Marry me, M. Here, where it all broke and healed. I said yes, tears blurring the view of Carlos watching from the terrace, smile genuine, unshadowed. The American dream we chased, freedom, love unapologetic, had found its footing on foreign soil, humanistic in its mess, betrayal as teacher, conflict as catalyst, emotions the glue holding fractured souls whole. In the end, speechlessness gave way to songs, of waves, of wind, of two women rewriting their story, one truthful line at a time.